Welcome to Table Talk, a place to gather, guide, and go.
Welcome to Table Talk, a community space where we can gather together, we can guide each other along life's journey, and we can go out with purpose and mission together. And together is always better. I'm Alyssa DelosSantos. Yes, that's how you say it, DelosSantos. And I am coming to you from South Texas. I am a child of God. I'm the mother of 3 darling humans and 1 precious 4-legged furry friend. I'm wife to 1, and I'm an educator and a blogger and an accidental Dateline 2020 rerun junkie. Happens.
I love it. And I'm Jill Dobrowansky. And yes, that is how you say it too. I am a wife, a mom to 1, a mother-in-law to 1 also, which is very exciting. And no 4-legged friends here. Sorry, Alyssa. But I live here in New Jersey. I live, as we say it here, down the shore. And it is a beautiful place to be so close to the beach. I am an educator, a podcaster, a writer, blogger, and now here we are together.
Yay. And we're glad you're here in this space with us, friends. We intend to gather here at the table to nourish. The table nourishes not just our bodies physically, but also nourishes our souls. And that's our hope in this video podcast, is to meet together, to leave stronger, both stronger physically and stronger spiritually, because we've been together.
Yeah, and I think it's also too, we're designing this table because both of us and so many of us have experienced either not having a seat at a table or being told that we are too big or too little to be sitting at a table. And so we've decided to create our own table where everybody's going to be welcome. Everybody's welcome to pull up a chair and have a seat and partake in what we are discussing.
It's true. There have been seasons of my life where I was so desperate to know I belonged, was so desperate to find a space to, you don't really truly know your voice until you exercise it. And when you feel like there's no place to exercise your voice, I think the world misses out on some of the goodness of God. And when there's room at the table, when there's a space at the table, it's an invitation. It's an invitation to come and share who you are and share in the glorious riches of this inheritance that we have here. And I don't know all the inheritance. You carry a piece of that inheritance, a piece of the person of God that I want to get to know. And if I'm not engaging with you, how do I know that? So I've been in and out of seasons. Jill, I know you have too.
Yes. For me, it's more of being too much of a personality, too big, and being told that there's no place for you here, or we don't know how to handle the energy that you bring and the ideas that you bring. And the other thing too is for far so long, we have. And when I say we, I mean the collective we. I'm not speaking individually we. The collective we have told not only women, but those on the periphery, those on the outskirts, that you don't fit the mold. There's no room for you here. And I've been told that. I know you have been told that too, Alyssa. And so we wanted to create the space where we can have those uncomfortable conversations with people, get really to the heart of what Scripture says about certain topics, and really provide a space for somebody to feel comfortable and for us to learn and grow too from them and their experiences.
Isn't that so true? Because when we gather at a table, we do many things, right? We laugh, sometimes we cry, we pass platters. And as we've talked about before around the table, like sometimes when my kids come to the table, they don't necessarily like what I'm serving.
Hmm.
And they just pass that one on. They go, this one wasn't for me, but I do want what's in the next dish. And that's really the heart and the hope and the prayer behind this too, Jill, right? Is that you may pull up and that day, whatever's being served doesn't exactly nourish your soul. And it's okay. It's okay that that dish isn't for you, but come back to the table, right? Because there's more. And there's
Yeah.
not just, we're not just one dimensional. And that's the beauty. It truly is the beauty of the table is pull up, look for something to nourish on because there's always something to nourish on, but we've got to create the space in order to have the meal, right?
Yeah.
Also, with that comes an invitation, right? I mean, just simply setting the table doesn't bring the community. And aren't we so desperate for community and we're so afraid to issue the invitation? So, this is a blanket invitation. Come to this table. Like there is space for you here. And you know, I was thinking a lot about the power of community. And we see that throughout scripture. I mean, there's a reason why Jesus had 12 and then he had kind of 3 and then he went 1. It's necessary. And I was thinking about there was a episode of Shark Week where they were I know, Shark Week. I have 2 boys. And and they were talking about they were doing this experiment with seals with decoys, and they put one seal out in the water and kind of waited and watched, and immediately that seal was devoured by sharks. Well, I mean, attempted to. It was a decoy after all, but and then they tied several together and threw them out into the water, and that group was so less bothered and touched by the predators because they were together. And it's such a beautiful picture of so often when we feel voiceless, when we feel like we don't have a place, we're isolated and we feel weak and we're vulnerable in those spaces, just like the decoy seal, right? But when we are together, when we pull up a chair and say, hey, I'm walking with you in this, I'm together with you, there's power in numbers, there's strength in numbers. That's not just an old adage, it's real. We've experienced it. I've experienced it. I've experienced in the darkest season of my life when people opted to show up for me. When I couldn't show up for them, I had nothing to give in return. But they made a space for me at the table and they said, you can come, you don't have to bring anything. You can be silent for as long as you need to, but there's space here for you. And isn't that our hope with Table Talk? That we can gather and you don't have to say a word, or you can have lots of words to say, but there's a space and you're welcome.
I love that. And I love that imagery of that, of the community coming together, because when we are going through difficult seasons or we're experiencing a trauma or just questioning our faith, we feel so isolated.
Mhm.
And oftentimes, we may try to reach out and have a seat at a table, but it might be the wrong table.
True.
And then, we're scarred and we have more questions than about faith and about community. And so I know that when we talked about doing this, it was we were originally talking about, well, are we going to have just men, just women? What are we going to do as far as guests? And we're just putting this in God's hands.
Yeah.
And, you know, Jesus was a carpenter. And
Mhm.
who better to build our table than to have Jesus at the heart of it and then build upon that. And I feel that the framework that we have is going to be solid for our cornerstone foundation.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. You know, I think it's important for us to communicate what do we intend to do here, and our desire really is to gather in community and to be nourished. It's also because we value voices, right, Jill? Like that's our thing. We know
Yeah.
what it's like to feel like, whether it was true or not, it felt true that our voice wasn't valued. And we know what that's like, but each of us is the image bearer. And so if I don't hear your voice, I miss part of that image. And so our desire is to connect in community. And you know, our stories are connection points. They're really good connection points. And we want to do that. We want to value story around here. After all, God is writing this story. And if we have to live the story in order to tell the story, and when you come to the table, we tell stories, right?
Yeah.
We share what's happened in the week. We talk about the story God is writing. It's beautiful imagery, and it's all throughout scripture. It's not just a fun idea because we sit at them often. Culturally, tables look different. And that's another beautiful imagery that comes with table. We get to learn what different cultures value around the table and how they sit at the table. And we want to do that here too. This isn't a myopic vision that we have for what we think the table looks like, but we are open-handed. And Jill, speaking of stories, we have already connection points in our stories. We're both educators. We have really hard last names. Yes. Both
Yes.
start with D. I mean, what? How does this happen? But, too, we also have some hard parenting stories.
Yeah, so true.
Some hard beginning stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that we can connect on all those points. We don't have to be exactly the same to be reminded that we were cut from the same cloth, if you will. We were born in the same image of God, and the value that we can esteem one another because of that is significant. And what a different world this would be if we took a little more time at the table, to say, I see you and I value you, and you don't have to think like me, and we don't have to be aligned on every single thing. But if we are aligned on the creator of heaven and earth, man, everything else flows from that, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It's so good. And, one of the other things too that both of us do and we've experienced is when either we're speaking at an event or speaking at a small group, or even just, through our interviews, our blogs, things like that, people reach out to us to share their story. And I know both you and I treat that as such a precious gift, and treat it so tenderly because sometimes they're hard stories. Let's face it. And, both of us understand the power of somebody, first of all, wanting to share, but then also how we respond to that and how we treat that story and that gift.
So true. So true. That's a very holy space when someone opts to be vulnerable enough to say, I'm going to trust you and I'm going to share this with you. Man, it just wrecks me.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And it's like then you're forever connected to that person too.
Yeah.
And it's just on a different level than just a human. You have a heart-to-heart spiritual connection also with that person when they share that with you.
You're so right. You're so right. I'm excited about getting going.
Me too. Me too. So I am so looking forward to the next couple months. So we are going to release this once a month. So make sure that you click the little subscribe button and you will never miss an episode of Table Talk. So I'm very excited.
Yes, me too. Me too. Also, so let's talk about very quickly what in the coming episodes in this season, we eventually will have guests, but this current season, we will not have guests yet. But if you love a guest and you want to recommend a guest, shoot us a line.
Definitely. And we're going to be talking a lot this first season about our own experiences. So you can also get to know us a little bit more. But also, we've all, like I said in the beginning, we've all had those experiences when we've been told, you're too big, you're not enough, you're this, you're that. And we're going to be tackling some of those hard statements. They're hard to hear, they're hard to receive. And what happens then when we're told those things. And so we're going to be tackling those conversations during this first season.
Yeah.
All right. So one thing I want to do, and we talked a little bit about this behind the scenes, and we had said what we are going to do is we are going to, before we leave every episode, share one thing that we are loving right. All right. So Alyssa, why don't you kick us off? What's one thing that you're loving right now?
So I am loving all the things. I'm loving many things. I'm actually loving so many things. It's hard to narrow it down to one. Welcome to my life. I'm also an educator, and so I'm always looking for new things, new gadgets, new toys. But currently, I'm actually reading with my students the book Fahrenheit 451.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a book by Ray Bradbury, and he wrote it in 1953. And what I love about good literature is that it's timeless, truly timeless. And he wrote it in 1953. And when I'm reading it with my students, mind you, they're 15 and 16 years old, I've asked them several times, does this feel uniquely like the world we're living in right now? And they say, yeah. And it's created this really rich conversation. And sometimes in a day when I haven't really talked to many adults, I'm talking to young adults, but not really many adults, I find it super profound the way we weave in life lessons to literature that was set in 1953. And I'm really loving the way that that story produces conversations that impact our future leaders. My students are thinking in ways that are unique, and it does something to me. Again, power of community, power of conversation, because when we gather together and we share ideas, there's an energy that comes behind it. So that's really what I'm loving in my world right now. It's nothing new. And I've read it 4 times, but it's uniquely appropriate for this year.
Yes, and we have educators. We all have those YA children's books that are our go-tos.
Oh, for sure.
For sure. So I love it, but I love how you're weaving the current climate and the current events into that. And it's so true. Again, when you come together as a community and have that conversation,
yes,
it's so powerful, especially with young adults.
Agreed.
Very much so. So
what about you?
Similar to you, I'm loving many things right now. But one of the things that I'm truly loving is this sense of community online. And I am part of, I have what I call my Nashville crew. So they're my friends, some of my inner circle that live in Nashville. And so that just keeps growing, my little family out there. And so one of the things that some of the women wanted to do was get together and start having conversations around different topics. And so right now we are looking at Christianity and race. We're also we're going to be talking about Christianity and sexuality, really having some hard conversations and really digging into what scripture is saying about it. And so I'm loving it. Thursday nights we meet, and it's a smaller group, but I think there's only like 9 or 10 of us, but we all have different experiences. Again, like we said, that we are bringing to this table and really having uncomfortable conversations. And it's been really eye-opening, and I'm just loving it. I'm loving my time with connecting with people. And some of these women on part of this group I've never met before. So they're new to me, I'm new to them, and we're all just kind of getting to know each other also. So it's very exciting when you can the power of technology can now bring people together. So I love that.
That was really number 2 on my list, Jill, was especially in the season that we're in, because we could be super lonely, and that can happen so much, and that can keep us from joining a table. And I was just thinking today how thankful I am for technology, for the ability to gather on digital platforms and say, hey, we can still get together. We can meet each other this way. And I think that's the antidote right now to lonely and afraid, is that we can still have these spaces to connect. So I echo that. That was my number 2 thing I'm really loving. Some of the apps that we can talk on off social media, all that sort of thing. I'm absolutely grateful for that in this season, especially.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. So are we going to give our viewers a go for this?
Yeah. Yeah, let's give a go. So here's what I think. I think so often we're waiting for an invitation to the table, that maybe we fail to invite someone to the table. So this month, let's be super intentional about either extending an invitation or accepting an invitation to connect with someone. It doesn't have to be, we don't have to picture tables with 1,000 chairs. What about just one? Just one more person at the table, and provide an opportunity to share your story, to connect, talk about things that are fun, but also don't be afraid to shrink back from things that are difficult. As you mentioned in your group, iron sharpens iron. That's straight from scripture. So
Yes,
one man
yes.
sharpens another. And so we need each other so that we don't grow dull. And it's easy. It's been easy for me in this season to feel like my faith is waning. And so if we have each other, we will sharpen. So let's do that this month. Let's let that be our go. Let's be intentional about extending and accepting invitations to the table.
I love that. My family and I still say it, and I'm sure yours does too. There's always room for one more.
Yeah.
Always room for one more. I love it.
Me too. Me too.
All right. Welcome to Table Talk. Be sure you subscribe. And also, share an invitation. Share an invitation to somebody to find this channel. Share an invitation for somebody to come and have a seat at your table. God bless and have a beautiful, beautiful day.
We'll see you next time.